In this chapter, we will talk about the respiratory system. And for general functions of the respiratory system, of course, the main one is gas exchanges. So this is how we get oxygen for the cellular respiration to burn glucose and get energy. Then take out the waste products from this process, which is mainly carbon dioxide. And also we will see that it will help in the acid-base balance. So those are like three big functions, or technically two big functions: gas exchange and the acid-base balance. Then there are other functions like sensing odors, producing speech, and straining, coughing to get things out of the airways. But again, those are the two big functions of the respiratory system. Now we can divide this system into two areas. The first one is the conducting zone, and here you can describe it as the pathway for air through the system, starting from the mouth all the way to inside the lung. So all of this is a conducting zone. Then there is the respiratory zone, which is here inside the lung. We'll talk about it. This is where the gas exchange happens. This is where we take oxygen in and send CO2 out. So the conducting zone is, think of it like a transporting area, whereas the respiratory zone, that is the gas exchange. The conducting zone is not involved in the gas exchange. It's just the transporting or allowing the gas movement. Then another way of looking at the respiratory system is by divisions. There is the upper respiratory, which is including mainly the nose and the pharynx, the back of the nose and the mouth. So all of this is the upper respiratory system. Then we have the lower respiratory system, which is the larynx, the trachea, the bronchus, and the lungs. And of course, inside the lungs, we will have the alveoli, part of the lower respiratory system. So for the nose, for the pharynx, there is nothing really major there to talk about. We will move directly to the larynx. Larynx is the first part of the lower respiratory system. And the larynx technically is made out of cartilage. So we will have big pieces of cartilages that are connected to each other. The main piece of cartilage is the thyroid cartilage. And this thyroid cartilage would give the wall of the larynx. So the walls of the larynx is made out of thyroid cartilage. This is mainly hyaline cartilage. Now, what do I mean by wall of the larynx? You need to think of the larynx as a box, empty from inside, but it has walls. Those walls are the thyroid cartilage. We will see what's inside it, okay? But that is mainly the thyroid cartilage. Then beneath the thyroid cartilage, there is a second set of cartilages, or another cartilage, that is called the coracoid cartilage. The coracoid cartilage its function is to connect thyroid cartilage with the trachea. This is the trachea, okay? This is the trachea. So, and the trachea is connected to the larynx, to the thyroid cartilage, by the coracoid cartilage. The trachea itself has cartilages as well. Those will call them tracheal cartilages. Now be careful, this is not part of the larynx, this is part of the trachea. Those tracheal cartilages are rings of hyaline cartilage to keep the trachea open. So those are the functions of the tracheal cartilages. Okay, so we have the thyroid cartilage, that is the main structure, the wall of the larynx. Coracoid cartilage to connect the larynx or the thyroid cartilage with the trachea, and then the trachea itself has tracheal cartilages. We said those are rings to keep it open. Now, if we look inside the larynx, inside the thyroid cartilage, this is the thyroid cartilage. Here is the thyroid cartilage. And this is the trachea, okay? And this is the coracoid cartilage. So we are looking at lateral view. And inside, what we will find inside the thyroid cartilage, we will find the vocal folds, or sometimes we call them the vocal cords. Those are responsible for making sounds. They will open and close to make sounds. What causes them to open or close? This arytenoid cartilage. Those are two sets of cartilages responsible for opening and closing the vocal folds. So when we talk, the air would come out from or through them, and as they move, that's how we will produce sound. Now the thing is, here, if we go through them, we'll end up in the trachea, which is the airway. So the air would go through them up and down. And we want only air to go through them. No solid objects should go into the trachea, whether they are water or food. Therefore, we need a mechanism to protect the airway. And that is where the epiglottis would come to play. The epiglottis is a structure made out of elastic cartilage, and it closes and opens to prevent food or solid objects from getting into the trachea. Okay, so this is the epiglottis. If we want to look at it from above, so this is here, I'm standing in the pharyngeal region, and I'm looking down. So this is the trachea. Those are the vocal folds. Okay, the epiglottis is this one here or this one here. Those are flipped images. Okay, this is the epiglottis that would cover the trachea. So if you go here inside, you will find the trachea. Those are the vocal folds. Now, why do we call it epiglottis? Because this is space, the space between the vocal folds, we call it the glottis. So the glottis refers to the space between the folds, and therefore this is the epiglottis, the area or what covers this glottis. So that's it for the larynx. We will see its model in the lab. It's pretty straightforward. Then let's talk about the trachea. The trachea, sometimes we call it the windpipe. It connects the larynx all the way to the lungs. So the trachea is mainly made out of tracheal cartilages, those rings, to keep it open. And we are talking about 16 to 20 of those hyaline cartilages or tracheal cartilages or the tracheal rings. There are other smooth muscles as well, other connective tissue, but mainly it's the tracheal cartilages. The trachea, once it goes between the lungs, it will split and it will give us the bronchus. Each one of those branches is a bronchus. We don't call it a trachea anymore. So once it's split, it's a bronchus. So both of them are bronchi. And those bronchi go inside the lung and keep splitting. And as they split, they lose diameter. So here the diameter is big, but as we move away, we're going to get into a smaller and smaller diameters. Not only that, we are losing diameter, but also we'll use the hyaline cartilage. So see those dots, those are hyaline cartilage. At one point, we don't have those hyaline cartilages. So this primary bronchi would split into secondary bronchi. The secondary will split into tertiary and so on. And there is like several levels of those branches. But the point is we are losing diameter as we move away from the primary bronchi, and also we are losing the cartilages. So as long as we have a hyaline cartilage, we'll call it a bronchus. But once we start to lose the hyaline cartilage, we'll call it a bronchiole. Okay, so bronchus with cartilage, bronchiole without the cartilage. And all of this is still part of the conducting zone. All of this is part of the conducting zone. So see here, for example, this is the terminal bronchiole. So we don't have hyaline cartilage. We're talking about 1 millimeter of diameter. This would even keep splitting, and it will give us something we'll call alveolar duct. Alveolar duct, it's the opening to the alveolar sac. And why do we call it alveolar sac? Because it's made out of those balls. Each one of those balls is called alveolus. And this alveolus is the site for gas exchange. So we are getting the air all the way to the alveolar sac, to the alveolus. Think of those alveoli as a hollow ball, like a soccer ball or something, or baseball. It's empty from inside, and the wall of it, it's very thin. And we will put those balls together. Not only that, but we will keep them connected. So there are rooms or there are windows between them. So the gas here will diffuse through those pores, alveolar pores, all the way to the end. So they are like chambers, but connected chambers with each other. Another example, you can think of it like a grapevine. Okay, so each one of those like grapes is one alveolus. However, the difference is that the grapes are individual fruits, but here alveolus, no, they are connected with the alveolar pore. So that's the alveolus. Another thing regarding to the bronchiole, that they have smooth muscles, and those smooth muscles would allow the bronchiole to expand. So this will allow better airflow to the alveolar sac. Another thing in this area is that we have plenty of blood capillaries. This is where the gas exchange is going to happen. This is where the gas exchange is going to happen. Also, we will have, although it's not shown here, we will have elastic fibers. We will see it in the lab, also sitting on the alveoli. Those elastic fibers will allow also the alveolus to expand and recoil. And this will allow the air also to flow in, and will help in gas exchange. Okay, so what's inside the alveolus? We said you can think of it, if you have like a soccer ball and you cut it inside, you will see it like it's empty from inside. Now for the alveolus, it's made out of cells, epithelial cells, mainly epithelial squamous cells. If you remember, the squamous cells, those are thin cells, and those are very useful for the gas exchange. Okay, so the gas would get through them into the blood, and CO2 will get out from the blood through them. So mainly those are the epithelial cells, and technically those will call them the type 1 alveolar cells. Type 1 alveolar cells. Those are the squamous cells. Then there is another type of cells, type 2 alveolar cells. Those not really for the gas exchange. Mainly those, you can think of them of support. They usually support. Mainly they produce a protein called surfactant. This protein, its function is to reduce surface tension. Now, if you remember water, if you put water in a cup and wait on it until it settles, there will be the water tension. That's the surface of the water molecules kind of like will hold their hands together and they will stretch. And that's what allows some insects like to float on water. Okay? Some insects will float on water based on the surface tension. Now, if we have this surface tension, of course, the alveolus is not a dry membrane. It's filled with a mucus. If we have this surface tension high, even gases, oxygen, for example, will not be able to attach to it. Think of it, the oxygen would bounce of the mucus, the oxygen molecule, because of the surface tension is high, like not an air bubble, you know, those soap bubbles. When you blow them, some of them will form. If you notice that they will touch the ground and sometimes will bounce. So this is what will happen if we have high surface tension inside the lungs. So surfactant, it's kind of a soap that will break the surface tension of the water or of the mucus, and this will allow the gas exchange. It will allow the oxygen to attach itself and then diffuse to the blood. So that's type 2 alveolar cells. Then what also inside the alveolus, we will have macrophages. Macrophages, those, as you know, are for the immune system, for the immunity. So this is how it will appear under microscope. Those are the alveoli, each one of those chambers, whether it's closed or open. Each one is alveolus. This is alveolar sac, okay, and this is part of the alveolar duct, and this is the bronchiole. Now, we said the gas exchange is going to happen between the inside of the alveolus and the blood capillaries, right? And this gas exchange is going to cross a respiratory membrane. This respiratory membrane is made out of 2 layers of cells, mainly 2 layers of cells. So we have the squamous or the type 1 alveolar cells, or the squamous cells, okay? And then we have the endothelial cells of the blood capillaries. So here we have the blood, here we have the gas. So oxygen has to go through the blood, or to the blood, through the squamous cells and the endothelial cells of the blood capillary. CO2 has to go from the blood toward the alveolus. We need to get rid of it. So it has to pass those cells, okay? So that is the respiratory membrane. It's made out of those 2 layers of cells. Of course, here we have the mucus layer, but it's not cells, it's just a mucus. Also, gases has to go through them. Okay, so you can see here, oxygen will diffuse in, CO2 will diffuse out through those cells. Now, this gas diffusion, or this gas movement in or out, is a simple diffusion. So there is no energy consumed in sending CO2 out to the alveolus or bringing oxygen in to the blood. It's simple diffusion. It depends on differences in concentration, and we will talk about. Okay, now one common disease of the respiratory system is the asthma. Asthma is characterized by inflammation of the airways. So in normal conditions, we will have a thin layer of a mucus, and therefore the air can pass through it or can pass along this mucus with no problem. But sometimes we will get plenty of mast cells, macrophages, neutrophils, basophils. All of those cells will cause inflammation, and if you remember, we will release histamine, and you know, those, we will have glands, and therefore as a reaction we will produce much of a mucus from the goblet cells. Those are goblet cells responsible for producing the mucus. So this means that the airway is blocked with the mucus. Gas cannot really go through the mucus. Gas can travel along the mucus, on the surface of the mucus, no problem, but not through it. Sometimes this will block the entire bronchus. So the entire bronchus is completely blocked by mucus. And that's why we will have asthma. So the patients at that time will start to cough, trying to get this mucus out of the way. Usually treatments will give those patients some inhalers, so to open up the airways, to relax the smooth muscles, and therefore to open the airways. So I'll stop here, and the following video we'll start talking about the lung itself and the physiology of the breathing.